The Catharian High Command had always prided itself on being the apex predators of the galaxy. Their sleek, metallic ships cut through space like silver daggers, each one a testament to their technological superiority. Admiral Zethkar stood on the bridge of the flagship Dominance, his 6 arms crossed in satisfaction as he gazed at the holographic display showing their latest conquest. "Another primitive world false to the Alpha," he declared to his officers, his voice carrying the authority of a species that had never known defeat. The bridge crew, their chitinous exoskeletons gleaming under the harsh blue lights, clicked their mandibles in approval. For 3,000 years, the Catharians had swept across the galaxy like a plague of steel and fire. They had encountered hundreds of species, each one claiming to be advanced, each one falling within cycles of first contact. The pattern was always the same: initial resistance, desperate attempts at diplomacy, and, finally, inevitable submission to the superior Catharian military might. The newest addition to their expanding empire was the Zelfring Confederacy, a collection of aquatic worlds that had lasted exactly 47 standard cycles against the Catharian advance. Their bioships had been impressive, their coral-based technology unique, but, like all the others, they had eventually knelt before the Alpha species. "Sir," Communications Officer Vexthin approached with measured steps, "we're receiving another transmission from the Outer Rim territories. It's about that new species the scouts discovered." Zethkar's compound eyes swiveled toward the officer. "The bipeds from the third spiral arm? What do they call themselves again?" "Humans, sir. They appear to be a young species, barely achieving interstellar travel. Our preliminary scans suggest they've only colonized 17 star systems." The Admiral's mandibles clicked in amusement. 17 systems? How quaint. And they still insist on maintaining their independence? "Yes, sir. Our diplomatic corps made contact 3 cycles ago. The humans were offered the standard terms: submit to Catharian rule, provide tribute, and maintain their cultural autonomy under our protection. They declined." A ripple of shocked clicking spread across the bridge. In 3 millennia of expansion, only a handful of species had been foolish enough to reject the Catharian offer of protection. Those that did rarely survived the subsequent demonstration of Alpha superiority. "Declined?" Zethkar's voice carried a dangerous edge. "Did they provide a reason for this unusual decision?" Vexthin consulted his data pad, his secondary arms working the controls while his primary arms held the device steady. According to Ambassador Krelthuan, their representative, a female called Saracheni, stated, and I quote, "Humanity appreciates the offer, but we have a policy of not kneeling to anyone, regardless of how shiny their ships are." The bridge fell silent except for the low humming of the ship systems. Zethkar's 6 arms slowly uncrossed, his massive frame towering over the command chair. The insult was clear, even across species barriers. To call Catharian vessels merely shiny was to diminish the technological marvels that had conquered the known galaxy. "Shiny ships," he repeated slowly, each word dripping with barely controlled rage. "This Sarachen, she mocks the superiority of the Alpha species?" "It appears so, sir." Ambassador Krelthuan also reports that the humans seemed entirely unimpressed by our technological demonstrations. When shown recordings of our plasma bombardment capabilities, one of their military officials allegedly yawned. Chief Tactical Officer Brexnall, a scarred veteran of 100 campaigns, stepped forward. "Admiral, perhaps these humans simply don't understand their position. Many primitive species require a more direct demonstration of our capabilities before they see reason." Zethkar considered this. In his experience, there were 2 types of species in the galaxy: those that submitted immediately upon seeing Catharian power, and those that needed a harsh lesson before accepting reality. The humans appeared to fall into the latter category. "Very well," he decided. "Signal the Third Fleet. We'll provide these humans with the education they clearly need. A standard pacification should suffice." "Sir," Science Officer Thelana interjected, her analytical nature compelling her to speak, "preliminary scans of human technology suggest they're approximately 700 years behind our current capabilities. Their most advanced warships appear to be fusion-powered with primitive projectile weapons. This may be over quickly, even for a standard pacification." "Excellent," Zethkar replied. "The sooner we conclude this business, the sooner we can return to more important matters. How long until the Third Fleet can reach human space? 42 cycles, sir, assuming they depart within the next rotation. See that they do. And, Vex then? Yes, Admiral? Make sure our records department is prepared to add 17 star systems to our territorial maps. I suspect they'll need updating soon. As the orders went out across the Catharian communication network, the vast machinery of the Empire's military began to turn. The Third Fleet, consisting of 47 warships and support vessels, began preparations for immediate deployment. Among the fleet's commanders, the assignment was viewed as little more than a training exercise, an opportunity for newer officers to gain experience in pacification techniques without significant risk. Fleet Admiral Gorthmar, commander of the Third Fleet, reviewed the intelligence reports with the same attention he might give to a routine supply manifest. 17 primitive systems, fusion-powered ships, projectile weapons. It would be over before it properly began. He estimated no more than 6 cycles to complete the pacification, including travel time between systems. Ensure the diplomatic vessels are ready, he instructed his staff. We'll want to accept their surrender immediately after the demonstration. No point in prolonging their suffering unnecessarily. Meanwhile, in the depths of space between Catharian and human territory, automated probe ships continued their silent observation missions. These mechanical scouts, no larger than fighters, transmitted continuous data streams back to the High Command. Their reports painted a picture of a species engaged in peaceful expansion, constructing space habitats and terraforming worlds with remarkable efficiency. What the probes couldn't capture, however, was the conversation taking place in a nondescript conference room on Earth's Luna base. Sarah Chen, now revealed to be humanity's Director of Interstellar Relations, sat across from General Marcus Torres, head of the Human Defense Initiative. So they're coming, Torres stated, reviewing the intelligence reports gathered by humanity's own deep space monitoring stations. Sarah nodded grimly. 47 ships, all significantly larger than anything we have. Our analysts estimate each of their heavy cruisers carries the firepower equivalent to our entire home defense fleet. And they think we'll just roll over? From their perspective, it's logical. They've done this hundreds of times before. Show overwhelming force, demand surrender, incorporate the new territory into their empire. It's worked for 3,000 years. Torres leaned back in his chair, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. They don't know about the Pittsburgh incident, do they? No indication they're aware of it. Their probes are sophisticated, but they're not designed to detect what they're not looking for. The Pittsburgh incident had occurred just 18 months earlier, when humanity's first experimental faster-than-light vessel had encountered a small Catharian patrol ship in neutral space. The Catharian vessel had demanded the human ship surrender and prepare to be boarded. When the human captain had politely declined, the Catharians had opened fire. The engagement lasted exactly 14 seconds. What the Catharians discovered, too late to save themselves, was that humanity's primitive projectile weapons were not the crude chemical propellants their scans had detected, but rather magnetically accelerated tungsten rods capable of punching through any known armor at significant fractions of light speed. The Catharian patrol ship had been reduced to expanding plasma before its crew could even signal for help. The question, Torres continued, is whether we let them make the first move or start the party ourselves. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, considering the implications. Humanity had spent the last year and a half preparing for this exact scenario. Every shipyard in human space was working around the clock, every military installation had been upgraded, and, most importantly, every human colony had been briefed on what was coming. We let them come, she finally decided. Let them make their demonstration. Let them think they're dealing with another species that will simply submit when faced with superior firepower. And then? Sarah's expression hardened, and, for a moment, Torres could see why the diplomatic corps had chosen her to represent humanity. Behind the calm exterior was a core of absolute steel. Then, we show them what happens when someone threatens humanity. The alpha species is about to learn that there's always a bigger fish in the pond. As the Catharian Third Fleet made its final preparations for departure, automated systems across human space were receiving encrypted updates. Weapons platforms hidden in asteroid fields powered up their targeting systems. stealth ships positioned throughout the outer colonies began final equipment checks. And, deep in the research facilities of Mars, teams of scientists put the finishing touches on humanity's latest surprise. The Catharians had never faced a species like humanity. They had never encountered a race that viewed their first defeat not as a devastating loss, but as valuable intelligence gathering. They had never met a people who, when faced with superior technology, didn't despair but, instead asked, "How do we kill it?" They were about to receive an education in human nature that would shatter their understanding of what it meant to be the alpha species in the galaxy. The Third Fleet departed on schedule, its ships forming a perfect diamond formation as they entered hyperspace. Admiral Gorthmar felt the familiar sensation of the universe bending around them as they traveled faster than light toward human space. In 42 cycles, they would arrive at the human's primary world and begin the demonstration. He had no way of knowing that they were not the hunters in this scenario. They were the prey. The Third Fleet's emergence from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system was a sight that should have struck terror into the hearts of any civilized species. 47 warships materialized in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with the dark energy of exotic matter shields. Each vessel was a masterwork of Catharian engineering, bristling with plasma cannons and gravitic torpedoes that could crack a planet's crust. Fleet Admiral Gorthmar stood in the command center of his flagship, the absolute authority, watching as his tactical displays populated with data about the human home system. His compound eyes registered satisfaction as the scanners revealed exactly what intelligence had predicted: a handful of primitive orbital installations, several dozen patrol craft that barely qualified as warships, and absolutely no sign of the defensive formations that more advanced species typically deployed. "Tactical assessment complete, Admiral," reported his chief weapons officer, Commander Yeltok. 17 defensive platforms detected around the primary world, approximately 43 small craft in patrol formation. Combined firepower estimate, negligible. Any response from the humans to our arrival? Yes, sir. We're receiving a transmission on standard diplomatic frequencies. Put it through. The main display flickered to life, revealing the face of Sarah Chen. She appeared to be sitting in what looked like a standard diplomatic office, completely calm despite the massive armada that had just appeared in her star system. Behind her, through a large window, the blue marble of Earth was clearly visible. "Admiral Gorthmar, I presume," Sarah said, her voice carrying across the communication link with crystal clarity. "I'm Director Chen of the Human Interstellar Relations Office. Welcome to the Sol system." Gorthmar's mandibles clicked in annoyance. The human's tone was entirely too casual, as if she were greeting a trade delegation rather than the most powerful military force she had ever encountered. "Director Chen," he replied, his voice amplified by his ship's communication systems to carry the proper weight of authority. "I am Fleet Admiral Gorthmar of the Catharian Third Fleet. I trust you understand why we are here." "Oh, absolutely," Sarah nodded. "You're here to demonstrate your technological superiority and demand our immediate surrender. Standard Catharian operating procedure, if our intelligence is correct." The casual way she discussed their tactics caught Gorthmar off guard. Most species spent the first several communication cycles in denial about their situation. "Your intelligence is adequate," he admitted. "Then, you understand that resistance is futile. Your primitive technology cannot hope to match the power of the alpha species. Surrender now, and your people will be incorporated into the Catharian Empire with minimal loss of life." Sarah appeared to consider this for a moment, then smiled slightly. "Admiral, I appreciate the offer, but I'm afraid humanity has a different perspective on the situation." "And what perspective is that?" "Well, we've had 18 months to study Catharian technology since the Pittsburgh incident. Your patrol ship was quite illuminating." Gorthmar's 6 arms tensed. The Pittsburgh incident was classified at the highest levels of Catharian intelligence. How could these primitives possibly know about it? "I don't know what you're referring to," he said carefully. "Of course you do," Sarah replied, still smiling. "Catharian patrol vessel Swift Talon encountered our experimental ship Discovery in neutral space approximately 1.7 years ago. Your captain demanded surrender, fired when we declined, and was subsequently destroyed. We recovered quite a bit of useful technology from the debris." The bridge of the absolute authority fell silent. Sarah continued, apparently oblivious to the shock she had just delivered. The interesting thing is, Admiral, your people seem to have made the same mistake that many species make when they first encounter humanity. You assumed that what you could see was all there was. Meaning? Meaning those 43 primitive patrol craft you detected? They're not our military. They're traffic control. Gorthmar's compound eyes widened as his sensor officers began reporting massive energy signatures appearing throughout the system. What had looked like empty space moments before was suddenly filled with ships, hundreds of them, all running completely silent until this moment. Beginning tactical demonstration, Sarah announced, her tone now completely businesslike. Please observe. One of Gorthmar's heavy cruisers, the Iron Supremacy, suddenly shuddered as something impacted its shields. Then, again. Then, a dozen times in rapid succession. The shield indicators on Gorthmar's tactical display began dropping steadily. What are they firing? Demanded Commander Yeltok. I'm not detecting any energy weapons. The answer came as the Iron Supremacy's shields failed completely and its armor began to buckle under continued impacts. Through the massive holes being punched in its hull, Gorthmar could see the twisted remains of its internal structure. Kinetic bombardment, Sarah explained helpfully. Tungsten rods accelerated to approximately 15% of light speed. We call them railguns, though technically they're magnetic acceleration cannons. Each projectile hits with roughly the same energy as a small nuclear weapon, but without all that messy radiation. The Iron Supremacy broke apart as its structural integrity finally failed. Secondary explosions rippled through the debris field as its plasma reactors went critical. Impossible, Gorthmar whispered. Our sensors would have detected launch signatures. Would they? Sarah asked. Admiral, your sensors are designed to detect energy weapons, plasma emissions, and gravitic distortions. They're not particularly effective against inert projectiles traveling through space. More of his ships began reporting impacts. The humans had somehow managed to target every vessel in his fleet simultaneously with weapons his sensors couldn't track until the moment of impact. Return fire. Gorthmar commanded. All ships, engage the human fleet. His vessels responded immediately, their plasma cannons lancing out across space toward the human ships. The beams struck with devastating force, reducing 3 human vessels to expanding clouds of debris. There! Yeltok shouted triumphantly. Their ships are fragile. Our weapons are cutting through them like he was cut off as new contacts appeared on the tactical display. Dozens of them, emerging from what had appeared to be asteroid fields and space debris. The destroyed human ships had been decoys, sophisticated holographic projections designed to draw Catharian fire and reveal their positions. Current exchange ratio stands at 47-3 in humanity's favor, Sarah reported with the detached professionalism of a sports commentator. Your plasma weapons are quite impressive, Admiral. Unfortunately, you're shooting at phantoms. Another Catharian cruiser died as a concentrated barrage of kinetic projectiles reduced it to scrap metal. Gorthmar realized with growing horror that his fleet was being systematically dismantled by weapons they couldn't see coming from ships they couldn't accurately target. How, he demanded. How is this possible? You're a primitive species. Are we? Sarah asked. Admiral, humanity has been preparing for this moment for 18 months. Every engagement scenario, every tactical possibility, every technical specification of your ships, we've studied it all. Did you really think we would just wait passively for you to arrive? The tactical display showed 17 human ships moving in perfect formation toward the Catharian fleet. These were larger than the others, and, as they closed distance, Gorthmar's sensors finally got a clear reading on their configuration. Admiral, his science officer reported in a shaking voice, those ships, they're covered in magnetic acceleration rails. Hundreds of them. Dreadnoughts, Sarah confirmed. Each one carries approximately 600 railguns capable of sustained fire. We built them specifically for this engagement. The lead dreadnought opened fire, and space suddenly filled with streams of tungsten projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. The Catharian destroyer Merciless Hunter simply vanished, disintegrated by impacts that hit faster than its automated systems could even register the incoming fire. "This is impossible," Gorthmar shouted into the communication link. "No species develops this rapidly. It violates every pattern of technological advancement we've observed." "That's because you've never encountered a species like humanity," Sarah replied. "When most species face a superior enemy, they despair. When humans face a superior enemy, we get curious. The question isn't how do we surrender? The question is how do we kill it?" Another wave of kinetic projectiles swept through the Catharian formation. The heavy cruiser Dominion's Wrath lost its entire forward section, its crew compartments open to vacuum. The frigate Swift Death tumbled helplessly as its engines were destroyed by precision strikes. "We studied every component of that patrol ship," Sarah continued, her voice now carrying an edge of steel. "We analyzed your armor composition, your energy shielding, your plasma reactor designs. And, then, we built weapons specifically designed to counter every advantage you possess." "Retreat!" Gorthmar commanded his surviving ships. "All vessels, prepare for emergency hyperspace jump." "I'm afraid that won't be possible," Sarah said calmly. Gorthmar's navigation officer looked up from his console in panic. "Sir, hyperspace engines are not responding. Something is interfering with the exotic matter containment fields." On the main display, Sarah held up a small device that looked remarkably similar to components from Catharian hyperdrives. "Hyperspace inhibitor," she explained. "Based on your own technology, but improved. Creates a field that destabilizes exotic matter, making faster-than-light travel impossible. Effective range, approximately 2 light hours." The trap was complete. The Catharian Third Fleet found itself unable to retreat, unable to effectively fight back, and facing an enemy that had studied them with terrifying thoroughness. "This is Admiral Gorthmar to all human vessels," he transmitted on general frequencies. We request terms for surrender." Sarah's expression didn't change. "I'm afraid surrender isn't an option, Admiral." "What do you mean?" "You came here to demonstrate Catharian superiority," Sarah replied. "To show humanity what happens when a species refuses to submit to your empire. Consider this a counter-demonstration." The human fleet opened fire again, and, this time there was no mercy in their targeting. They had learned everything they needed to know about Catharian technology and tactics. The remaining ships of the Third Fleet were systematically destroyed, their crews given no opportunity to abandon ship. When the last Catharian vessel went silent, Sarah Chan looked directly into the communication camera. "Tell your high command that humanity sends its regards," she said. "And, Admiral? The next time you want to demonstrate alpha superiority, you might want to make sure you actually are the alpha species." The transmission ended, leaving only the expanding debris field and the silent human fleet as evidence of what had occurred in the Sol system. For the first time in 3,000 years, a Catharian fleet had been not merely defeated, but annihilated. Word of the disaster would eventually reach Catharian High Command, carried by the automated probe ships that had observed the battle from a safe distance. But, for now, space around Earth was quiet once again, and humanity had sent a very clear message about their intentions regarding galactic politics. They would not be conquered. They would not submit. And anyone who tried to force them would discover exactly what it meant to face a species that viewed impossible odds not as a reason for surrender, but as an engineering problem to be solved. The emergency session of the Catharian High Command convened exactly 73 cycles after the last transmission from the Third Fleet. In the 3 millennia of their empire's existence, no fleet had ever been completely destroyed. Ships had been lost to natural phenomena, accidents had claimed vessels, but never before had an entire battle group simply vanished into silence. Admiral Zethkar stood before the holographic projection table in the center of the Great Council chamber, his 6 arms trembling with barely controlled rage as he reviewed the probe data for the 100th time. Around him, the most powerful members of Catharian society sat in their crystalline seats, their compound eyes reflecting the blue glow of the tactical displays. "Explain to me," Supreme Commander Vorthaxi demanded, her ancient voice carrying the authority of someone who had ruled the galaxy's most powerful empire for over 400 years, how 47 warships, crewed by our finest officers, were defeated by a species that had not achieved interstellar capability until recently. The probe recordings played again on the central display. Sleek human vessels appeared and disappeared like ghosts, striking with weapons that left no energy signature until the moment of impact. Catharian ships, vessels that had conquered hundreds of worlds, were torn apart by projectiles moving at impossible speeds. The humans somehow developed beyond our projections, Admiral Zethkar reported, his voice hollow with disbelief. Their technology appears to have advanced at a rate that defies all known patterns of species development. Advanced how? Demanded General Krexthal, commander of the Catharian ground forces. What weapons could possibly penetrate our shields and armor so efficiently? Chief Science Advisor Thelmiran, her elderly frame supported by mechanical exoskeleton enhancers, approached the display with careful steps. As the Empire's leading expert on alien technologies, she had been analyzing the probe data since it arrived. Kinetic weapons, she announced, her voice cutting through the murmur of confused clicking from the assembled commanders. Magnetic acceleration systems firing inert projectiles at approximately 15% of light speed. The chamber fell silent. The concept was so primitive, so crude, that it took several moments for the implications to register. Impossible, General Krexthal stated flatly. Kinetic weapons are obsolete technology. No species would waste resources on such primitive systems when energy weapons are clearly superior. That assumption, Thelmiran replied carefully, appears to have been incorrect. Our shields and armor are designed to deflect plasma beams and absorb energy impacts. They are not optimized against high-velocity solid projectiles. Supreme Commander Vorthaxi's mandibles clicked in agitation. Are you suggesting that our 3,000-year technological advantage was negated by rocks? Tungsten rods, Thelmiran corrected. Accelerated to relativistic speeds and delivered with precision that suggests advanced targeting systems. Combined with stealth technology that rendered their launch platforms nearly invisible to our sensors. Admiral Zethkar activated another section of the probe recordings. There's more. Observe their communication during the engagement. Sarah Chen's voice filled the chamber, calm and professional as she explained humanity's tactics to the doomed Admiral Gorthmar. The assembled Catharian leadership listened in stunned silence as the human revealed their knowledge of the Pittsburgh incident and their systematic analysis of Catharian technology. 18 months, Vorthaxi said when the recording ended. They accomplished this in 18 months. The probe data indicates extensive preparation, Thelmiran continued. Hidden weapons platforms throughout their system, advanced manufacturing capabilities, coordinated fleet movements that suggest significant military expansion. This was not a desperate defense. This was a carefully planned ambush. Commander Yexhan of the Intelligence Division leaned forward in her seat. What concerns me most is the humans' apparent knowledge of our tactical doctrines. She predicted our approach, our demonstration protocols, even our communication frequencies. How did they acquire such detailed information from a single destroyed patrol ship? The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The implications were staggering. If humans could reverse engineer that much information from debris and wreckage, what did that suggest about their analytical capabilities? Perhaps, suggested Fleet Admiral Gexnoth, we should consider the possibility that we underestimated this species significantly. Underestimated? Zethkar's voice rose to a dangerous pitch. They're primitives. Bipedal mammals who have barely learned to travel between stars. How could we possibly have underestimated them? By assuming, came a new voice from the chamber's entrance, that technological development follows the same pattern for all species. The assembled commanders turned to see Ambassador Krelthuan, the diplomat who had made first contact with humanity, entering the chamber. His usually pristine ceremonial robes were travel-stained, and his movements suggested exhaustion from rapid transit across half the galaxy. Ambassador, Supreme Commander Vorthaxi acknowledged. Your report. Krelthuan approached the central display, his four hands working a portable data unit. I believe I can provide context for what occurred at Sol. The humans are not like other species we have encountered. Elaborate. Most species, when faced with superior technology, attempt to negotiate or seek accommodation. They accept that they are outmatched and look for ways to coexist with their superiors. Humans do not think this way. New data appeared on the holographic display, industrial output charts, energy consumption graphs, population distribution maps. Since our first contact, every human colony has tripled its manufacturing capacity. Every system has constructed new orbital installations. Their entire species has mobilized for war. General Krexthal examined the data with growing alarm. This level of resource allocation, they converted their entire economy to military production? More than that, Krelthuan replied. They redesigned it. When faced with our technological superiority, they didn't despair. They treated it as a problem to be solved through engineering. Thelmiron's mechanical appendages worked frantically at her analysis console. If these figures are accurate, they've increased their total military capability by over 2,000% since first contact. That should be impossible without significant population growth and technological advancement. Which brings us to the central problem, Krelthuan continued. Humans don't advance technologically the same way other species do. Most civilizations progress gradually, building on established foundations. Humans, they leap. Admiral Zethkar's eyes narrowed. Explain. When humans encounter a new technology, they don't simply copy it. They analyze its underlying principles and find ways to improve it. The hyperspace inhibitor they used on the Third Fleet wasn't just our technology, it was our technology made better. The implications sent ripples of unease through the assembled leadership. If humans could not only reverse engineer Catharian technology but improve upon it, what did that suggest about their future capabilities? What do you recommend? Supreme Commander Vorthaxi asked. Krelthuan was quiet for a long moment, clearly struggling with his response. Immediate withdrawal from human space and a formal non-aggression treaty. The chamber erupted in shocked clicking and angry chittering. The suggestion that the Catharian Empire should retreat from any species, let alone a recently emerged one, was beyond comprehension for most of the assembled commanders. Absolutely not. Admiral Zethkar declared. We are the Alpha species. We do not retreat from primitives. Admiral, Krelthuan replied carefully, I've spent more time studying humans than anyone in this chamber. They are not primitives. They are something entirely different. Such as? A weapon species. The chamber fell silent again. Weapon species were theoretical constructs, civilizations that had evolved specifically for warfare rather than peaceful development. Most xenobiologists considered them impossible, surely any species that violent would destroy itself before achieving interstellar travel. Consider the evidence, Krelthuan continued. Humans emerged from a world where they were neither the strongest nor the fastest predators, yet they dominated every environment on their planet. They survived ice ages, volcanic catastrophes, and massive extinction events. Their entire evolutionary history is one of adaptation and survival against impossible odds. More data appeared on the display: human historical records, evolutionary timelines, technological development curves. When they encountered problems, they didn't adapt biologically, they created tools. When they faced prey they couldn't catch, they invented weapons. When they encountered environments they couldn't survive in naturally, they built shelters and vehicles. Their default response to any challenge has always been to engineer a solution. Fleet Admiral Gexnoth studied the historical data with growing concern. Are you suggesting that humans are naturally inclined toward warfare? I'm suggesting that humans are naturally inclined toward winning. The methods they use are entirely secondary to achieving victory. Supreme Commander Vorthaxi rose from her crystalline throne, her ancient frame moving with surprising grace. You paint a grim picture, Ambassador. But, even if your assessment is correct, they remain a single species with limited resources. The Empire spans thousands of worlds. For now, Krelthuan agreed. But, consider this, in 18 months, they went from being unable to threaten a single patrol ship to destroying an entire fleet. What might they accomplish in 18 years? Or 18 decades? The chamber fell silent as the assembled leadership contemplated the implications. If humans could advance this rapidly when threatened, what would happen when they decided to expand beyond their current territory? Moreover, Krelthuan continued, we must consider the psychological impact. News of the Third Fleet's destruction will spread throughout the Empire. For 3,000 years, Catharian supremacy has been absolute. What happens to our authority when subject species learn that we can be defeated? Admiral Zethkar's mandibles clicked in frustrated rage. Then, we crush them completely. Deploy the entire fleet if necessary. Show the galaxy that challenging the Catharian Empire leads only to extinction. With respect, Admiral, I believe that approach would be catastrophic. Why? Thelmiran approached the central display, her analysis complete. Because the humans have already shared their technology with others. The statement hit the chamber like a plasma blast. New data streams appeared showing communication intercepts, trade agreements, and technological exchanges between humans and other species throughout the galaxy. Since the destruction of the Third Fleet, human representatives have made contact with the Zelthran Confederacy, the Crystalline Collective, and at least 17 minor species within our sphere of influence. They're offering technological assistance in exchange for mutual defense agreements. Supreme Commander Vorthaxi's compound eyes reflected the cold light of understanding. They're building an alliance. More than that, Krelthuan added grimly. They're building an arsenal. Every species that accepts human technology becomes capable of threatening Catharian forces. Every ally they gain is another enemy we must face. The assembled leadership sat in stunned silence as the true scope of the crisis became apparent. The humans weren't just refusing to submit, they were actively working to undermine Catharian dominance throughout the galaxy. Recommendations? Vorthaxi asked quietly. Thelmiran consulted her analysis one final time. Immediate ceasefire. Formal recognition of human sovereignty. Begin negotiations for peaceful coexistence before they decide we represent a threat that needs to be eliminated. Admiral Zethkar's 6 arms gestured in violent denial. We are the Alpha species. We do not negotiate with inferiors. Admiral, Supreme Commander Vorthaxi said, her voice carrying the weight of 3,000 years of imperial authority, after today's briefing, I'm no longer certain who the inferior species is in this equation. The session ended in unprecedented disorder as commanders argued, analysts frantically updated their projections, and the unthinkable reality settled over them all. For the first time in their empire's history, the Catharians faced an enemy they might not be able to defeat. In the depths of human space, Sarah Chen received the latest intelligence reports with quiet satisfaction. The Catharian response was exactly what human psychologists had predicted: confusion, denial, and internal conflict. Their empire was built on an assumption of absolute superiority that humanity had just shattered. Phase 1 was complete. The galaxy's self-proclaimed alpha species had learned that there was always a bigger fish in the pond. Now it was time for Phase 2, showing them what happened when that bigger fish decided it was hungry.